welcome to Dying to Live. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kristen.
Yeah. I thought I would maybe start with a really vulnerable story that I have about I think it's the first time that we met. It might be the first time that we shared any like meaningful space together. Maybe not the first time we met, but um, I I have kind of like dubbed myself into the street campaign for others like vulnerability macro campaigns like the Glennon Doyles and the Brene Browns of the world. Like they're doing this work,
Totally.
they're leading this work, but I think that vulnerability as the ultimate human connector is so important. And so every chance I get, I kind of take a moment to be vulnerable. And I wanted to share with you about like my first impression of you.
Mm.
So, so
Fun.
yeah. So we met like 10 years ago now at an outdoor industry cause related film festival.
Yep.
And the organization I was with was kind of new on the scene in these spaces. And you and the folks that you were with were pretty well embedded in the space already. And I remember being at this super hip bar in Telluride called There, which is so much fun.
Yep.
Drinking picklebacks, but
Yep.
that's another story.
Hmm.
And you walked in with your crew, and you have this, since people can't see you right now, you have this luminosity about you. You radiate light in such a way that most people don't. And you walked in, and I was like, damn, I have got to be friends with this person. She she just radiates this light and has this energy, and I can tell already that she's doing amazing things, and I didn't even know who you were or what your work was yet. And by the way, you're strikingly physically beautiful. So that just amplifies all the things about you. And immediately after I was like, I have to be friends with this person, I thought, oh my God, she's not going to want to be friends with me. And she's like radiating at a higher frequency than I am. And she's so cool because she knows all these people. And like that is so far from like the you that actually is. You are such a welcoming person and such a community person. And so it took me a lot of courage to walk over to your table and introduce myself to you. And I'm so glad that I did because here we are 10 years later on um similar but different paths and both doing work that's close to our hearts.
Mm. Whoa, that's such a wonderful way to start the morning. Start today. Wow. Kristen, thank you so much. That's a lovely, lovely thing to say. I remember being there, dot, dot, dot. And I believe like we ended up dancing all over that bar that night.
We
Uh,
did.
yeah, maybe up against a like pole at one point together. So
Oh.
I feel like this friendship kicked off like real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, less a pole in that bar, maybe more a wooden post, but we made it a pole.
We made it a poll. We made it a poll. I mean, I feel the same way about you. I remember you walking up to our crew and I was like, ooh, this is fun. I like this lady.
Amazing.
Obviously, because here we are. So thank you so much. What a wonderful thing to say.
Well, I think the lesson is, when you feel called to know somebody, when you feel drawn to a community or people, man, take the chance. Say hello. Push that fear away and you just never know what's going to happen.
Totally. And I think that I feel scared walking up to people I don't know all the time, but almost everyone is cool and nice and like welcoming. It's very rare that someone is just like looks at you like you're crazy, and like you said, just take the chance because look at us, like 10 years we've orbited in all sorts of different ways. We've crossed paths in lots of different ways, work, life, all over the place. And I think that that's what's so wonderful about this community and about you and some of those people that just show up in your life in these like awesome little ways right when you need to see them or right when you need to hear from them, even if it's just a little text or an email or, you know, a comment on your Instagram post or something. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was thinking about that this morning in preparation for our chat today, the way that we've come in and out of each other's lives, and and now is particularly meaningful because of the work that we're both doing on multiple fronts, which I'm excited to talk about in a second. But first, I also want to ask you, as I do every session with someone, how are you doing in this very odd COVID time? And how are you doing really?
Yeah, yeah. How am I doing really? You know, I think that this week has been hard.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
I am tired. Uh, I feel like we just came through this crazy election. It's not really over. I feel like it's just this thing that is going to go on forever. We came through this election, we, won the presidency as we needed to, but it doesn't feel over, and we're still in a global pandemic, and we are in our houses. Yesterday, or like Oregon, locked us down for 2 weeks. We are back to lockdowns. We're back to being stuck in our houses and not being able to see our friends as much. And we're turning into winter. So when we do see our friends outside and stuff, it's, huddled in rain gear. And, obviously we can't just like laze around in a sunny backyard anymore. It's dark. It feels like this like turning in time. And I think that feels really heavy right now, but I also feel like I'm feeling the big need to just like stop, to
Mm,
pause, to
mm,
recognize where we are, that we've been in this for 8-ish months in the pandemic, like where the world completely shifted. Um,
mm,
we've we're moving into a new administration. We are in a really crazy time in like America's history right now, with massive reckoning in front of us. Um, and I feel like right now, rather like there's a part of me that's like, just keep going, like keep, crossing the things off the list. But I'm, you know, physically stopping myself from doing that this weekend. Like, it's been a hard week. I'm going to stop. I'm going to make a lot of food and just like snuggle with my animals. So,
mm.
doing well, but I feel incredibly fortunate and grateful for what I've got. But it's hard right now. It's hard.
Oh,
It's heavy.
so heavy. So you're in Portland.
Oh, yes. I'm in Portland,
And
Oregon.
I'm in Seattle, and so you're now on a tighter lockdown, and we have travel advisories in effect that's leading to a tighter lockdown. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of time. Um and so I had a before lockdown happens, I had a massage the other night, not at an overly spiritual place, but the
Mm,
person when I was walking out touched my arm and said, I want to make sure you understand, like the breadth of what's happening in the collective right now has an effect on each of us individually. And so even if something's not touching your life specifically, the energy that's out there right now is so heavy. And if you're feeling heavy, there's a million reasons why that's okay. And just to sit with it. And I was so grateful for that because
yeah.
something we don't do enough in this culture is that kind of truth telling. It's hard not to when you're in a pandemic and you're looking it in the face every day, but yeah, it's hard right now. It's hard to continue to do business as usual as someone that's in corporate America. uh we are doing business as usual, and it's hard to sometimes be enthusiastic for that when you just want to kind of cocoon and make food and snuggle with animals.
Yeah, and it's okay to cocoon and make food and snuggle with animals. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And I think that just recognizing that we're all really in this together, whether we recognize it or not. I think
Mm,
that everyone is going through stuff. And, as a white woman, like I'm
mm,
incredibly privileged, and I have so much to be grateful for. Um, And I just think like recognizing where we're at and recognizing what our neighbors are going through and checking in on people, like
Mhm.
I think we reconnected this last time because I like literally spent one Sunday drinking tea, going through my phone, just texting a bunch of people that I hadn't heard from in a while, just to check in and say hi and like send them love. And I think that's been really wonderful because it's created a lot of this like back and forth with like wonderful humans that I haven't heard from in a long time. And I think it's just a good reminder that there's community out there, even though you can't always see them.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, I was so grateful when you reached out. I always am when we reconnect, but this time felt especially needed and poignant because of the way that you did it, which was just to say, "Hey, I'm going through my phone, and your number came up, and we haven't talked in a while, and I just wanted to reach out and say hello." And I was like, "Oh, we should all be doing that right now. We need all the
Yeah,
community we can get."
I think that there's so much we're taught, gosh, especially in America, we're taught, stand on your own, be independent, like you can do this on your own. And I think that I've felt that in the past that, to show that I'm strong, to prove that I'm worth it, like I can do this by myself. But what I'm realizing as I continue to get older, and this year especially, is like, oh my gosh, like the strength and the courage is in leaning, like in leaning into your community and asking for help. Like you started this off with vulnerability. It's like being vulnerable and being like, oh, this is hard. Is this hard
Mhm.
for you?
Mm.
And I think that we're never alone and we're in this together and we need each other. And that's not a weakness. That is a great strength. And I think that I just, I, I'm starting to see those gears turning where people are starting to understand like we need each other so much more than we like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's one fundamental way to break down the system that's been created for us because the system keeps us apart for very good for them reasons, but not good for humankind. We are community based life form, right? So, yeah, I think if there's anything positive coming out of this, it's the reconnection in the community. And I have a friend. She was on the podcast, and the title of that podcast is something like "Memes Will Save Us,"
Mm.
because she has been unable to deeply connect with people for her own reasons, but the connection she's feeling is in sharing memes. So she's able to share memes widely and get something really meaningful for herself out of that and also feel like she's giving. And I love that so much.
I love it. That's awesome. I think connection looks so different for everybody, like it's wonderful. I was texting with one of my friends who's 14 and
Oh,
she was like, "Oh, I forgot people text," and I was like, "Whoa." I am so old, and her connection is all through all these different channels that, man, I don't even understand anymore.
yeah.
But she was like, "Sorry, I'm so late in responding." It's like, this is amazing. Yeah, connection just happens in so many different ways. And I think, we're coming through this election like we've been talking about. And, the state of the country is like, gosh, we're so, even in the face of so much polarization and division, what happens to our neighbors matters. It matters
Mm,
so much, not just because it will eventually affect our lives, but because we're also connected. And, when we vote in elections like we just did with the insane turnout that we had, this incredible turnout more than ever before, we aren't just voting for a candidate or for democracy, we're voting for each other. Like I'm voting for you, I'm voting for my neighbor, I'm voting for my dad. And, we vote to take care of each other. And I think that that includes everything we're doing. Like just thinking about it that way as we're moving through our day, like how are we taking care of ourselves and each other and like all the different actions we're taking.
mm.
I think this year has forced us all to slow down a little bit and think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, thank goodness for that, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I love about you is that you live everything that you're just saying in both your personal life and your work life. And I want to talk a little bit about both and how those have evolved. Because I've seen your work life evolve significantly over the past 10 years. And what I love about where you are now is that you are at this confluence of business, brand, and cause. Those are your words. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about this, why it's important, the cause piece of it.
For
And, I think I want to make an assumption that now maybe that's a little more welcomed, a little more understood, a little more amplified than it was 10 years ago when you started.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. 10 years ago. I mean, you mentioned, this film festival where we met, when gatherings were a thing. Part of my work was going to, film festivals, and we have a big trade show in the outdoor industry that we all run around in. And 10 years ago, I was like one of the only people walking around that show talking to people about legislation and with postcards and petitions, for people to sign to their members of Congress. And like, it was not a thing. This was before cause marketing and impact campaigns, and strategic partnerships were the crazy buzzwords they are today. And this was before everyone and their mom, was talking about the power of storytelling. And 10 years ago is right around the same time that social media hit the scene too. And I think my business, and I think this movement, it's not, I think that it's inextricably linked too, because we're on these parallel tracks where social media hit the scene, no one knew what they were doing, and I saw an opportunity. I was like, I know how to do this. I didn't. I just taught myself. I jumped in and ran, like the crew that we had was totally fine taking a risk and going for it. And I think social media was a big instigator in building the movement that we're seeing today. It's a tool, right? It can be good or bad. It can be really bad, but we're going to focus on the good, right? And it allowed us to amplify so much of what was happening. Like, look at it today. It's, conservation is cool, and social justice is cool, and voting
So cool.
is cool, and athletes are going to DC, to meet with legislators, and like that, I mean, in my wildest dreams, I was like, this is going to happen. We're going to make conservation cool. A friend of mine, and like, we would say that, like, we're going to make conservation cool, and it wasn't just us. It was this huge movement of people, and it just caught on and spread like wildfire. And, I think that we're creating a lot of impact. And that's really exciting. And, I do think you're right. It's so important now, and it's more important now than ever, just given where we are. And I think it's really simple when you get right down to it, right? It's every single breath that we take, the water that we drink, the food that we eat. It all depends on us taking care of each other and our communities, and that includes the earth. I think we've talked about this already. We're so inextricably linked. Like, we don't work if we're not taking care of each other. And we can't have environmental justice without social justice, and vice versa. And we definitely can't have thriving businesses without healthy communities. It's not possible. And it is that simple. And I think that when you look at some of the challenges that we're facing, environmentally, in social justice movements, just in our everyday lives, it can be really overwhelming, and it can be daunting. But it can also be really empowering and really exciting. And I think how, like, if you look at it with a sense of curiosity and creativity, it's like, how can we get creative to use our brands and our influence to make this world better, to make it more just, to make it more equitable, to make it a healthier place for people to live and play. That's the confluence that holds so much power, and so much potential. And I think that's why I've always been drawn to it. And I don't know like when or why that all formed, but that's where I want to work. Like, that's where I want to live, and that's where I want to play. Because I think that's where we're going to have the ability to really change the world. It sounds cheesy, but I think
no. Actually, I was going to ask you, so it can be intimidating, and
Yeah.
overwhelming. And it can be one of those things that can be so overwhelming that it causes people to not start. So I wondered if you had any kind of off the cuff advice for small ways that people can start in their own backyards, in their homes, with their own work roles, whatever that means, with their children.
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing we need to learn how to do is listen, is to talk to each other, but not be the one always talking, right? So ask your kids, like, what matters to you? And then have a conversation about it. Talk to your neighbor and ask them what matters. Like, have a conversation about it. I think that's where so much impact can be made just on the daily level. When you're at the store and we're all, geared up in our masks now and it's weird. It's, asking the person who's, checking out your groceries, like, how are you doing? Like,
Mhm.
how are you doing today? And like, how, what's going on in your life? Having just that real kind of conversation, I think those small little things can have such a huge impact, and anyone can do it, right? And then you
Mm.
can grow from there. There's lots you can do, is, start researching what's going on in your neighborhood and your backyard and ways that you can make a bigger impact. But I think that the simplest thing I would say, and what I really advocate for, is just trying to understand each other better.
Mhm.
Like, ask questions and really listen, like really listen to what people are telling you.
Yeah. I love questions too, like what brought you joy today?
Yeah.
What's making you anxious today? Where are you finding peace in all of this? Because there's something, we don't learn if we don't learn from each other.
Mhm.
Um, and there's so much to be gained from that kind of sharing. So
Yeah.
understanding how somebody else might find peace, or the cause that somebody is concerned with at this moment that you might not have any view into,
Totally.
allows you to expand your consciousness about all the things that are happening in this world and the ways that you can make a difference in a way that's comfortable and accessible for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just having a conversation with a colleague of mine. We work on a campaign together, and, you know, she was telling me about, groups of indigenous people in the gorge, the Columbia River Gorge, where we live, that, we're doing like a fundraising drive for propane because they don't have heat and they don't have running water. And she's running around trying to help support these communities. And like, I work on campaigns to restore, chunks of that river. And I didn't even know some of the, extents of what's going on there. And again, I think that comes with privilege, but I also think that that's where the listening comes in, and like
Mm.
asking the questions and asking about more of what's going on, and not just focusing on the things that you can see, right in front of your face. And I think that it's really important for us to just continue to learn more about what's happening in our own communities.
Oh, I love that. I'm having such a love affair right now with curiosity.
Mm.
So, curiosity wasn't necessarily something I grew up with as a concept. And so I've had to kind of teach myself what that means over my adult life. And it's a never ending source of fascination for me now. Like, what does it mean to be curious about a person, their life, a cause, the things that are happening in our world? And to continue to dig a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, so that we can get the full picture of what's happening. The news isn't going to give us that full picture. One story with someone isn't going to give us that picture. It's a continued focus on being curious about the world around us so that we can figure out how we can give back to it and interact with it in a way that is meaningful for our own lives.
Totally. I mean, when you were just talking about that, I was just thinking, I mean, you have a child. I don't have children, but I know people who do. And when you were hanging out with like a 2 or a 3-year old and you're talking about something and they're like, why?
Yes.
Why? Why? And they just keep asking why, and you keep coming up with answers. And then you realize you don't actually
You
know.
don't know why. Yes.
And you're like, oh, I have no idea. I think that that's everything, right? Like, you think you know what's going on, and you really don't when you get right down to it. And I think that's what it means, just to like listen and ask the question, like, why, and then get to the point where, oh, I got to do some more digging, I got to understand this more, read some books, like, yeah, do some
Yeah.
research. Yeah.
How many totally surface conversations are we having because we've never gone 4 or 5 whys deep and realized, oh shit,
Right.
I don't actually know what I'm talking about.
I mean, kids are like fantastic to uncovering that. They have such a way. They're like, I feel like they look in the world in such a simplistic way, but also in like the most wise, like deep way, where I feel like I understand things so much better after I've hung out with like a child. And part of it's that they ask you why all the time and you have to try to explain this, but and also, acknowledge that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that so often when you're with kids, or with people who have that kind of joy or it's curiosity, right? They're like, look at this leaf, like, why does it have these veins and why does it do this? You're like, oh my god, like,
I don't know. I have to Google that.
like, how cool would it be if we all just walked around like that? How much better would this world be,
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to circle back to something else you said that was really important too, which was that when you started out, you didn't know what you were doing and you taught yourself and you just forged forward. I was there. You looked like you were doing, like you knew what you were doing. And I think that's so important for anybody that is on an entrepreneurial path, anybody who is embarking on a new journey in their life, whatever that may be. Guess what? You don't actually have to know what you're doing. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be, I think we get into this kind of perfectionist state sometimes, but you don't have to know the thing to do the thing. You just have to do the thing. The most important thing is the doing.
I mean, 100%. Yeah. I still don't know what I'm doing half the time, right? And if
No.
anyone, especially this year, if anyone tells you they know exactly what they're doing and exactly what the plan is going to be, it's not real. Like, don't run away. Like, run away
Yes.
from that person. They don't know, because nothing ever works out exactly according to plan. It's great to have plans. Like, I have plans all over the place and like lists and stuff, but what I've figured out is that so much of my work and so much of my life is just like being willing to try and figure it out and make mistakes and be okay with it and fail. I failed so many times, made so many mistakes. Um, and I think those are the things that have taught me the most. And sometimes they're really hard and sometimes
Mm.
really, really fall down. And you got to get back up again. But again, I think it goes back to like, you're never alone, right? So, I saw an opportunity, I threw the opportunity out there, and, I jumped in and said I knew what I was doing. And then I asked a bunch of people who knew more than I did, right? And so it's
Mm.
being willing to ask other people. Um, and, finding those mentors, finding the people who are going to be your champions, and then you end up being their champions down the line. I think that our industry, the outdoor industry, and then honestly the environmental and nonprofit industry, it's very predominantly male dominated, and I think as a woman that's sometimes been really hard to make my way through. But when I first got started, I zeroed in on 2 women, Amy Kober, who works for American Rivers, and my boss at the time before I started Under Solen, Nicole Cordan. And I watched Nicole like completely take control of a room full of dudes and just like tell us what we were doing and go. And Amy was a different kind of leader, where she took me under her wing and was like, this is how we do this, and taught me all these things. I was like her apprentice. um, and honestly, those 2 women have shaped my life completely. They helped me launch Under Solen. My boss helped me launch the company that she knew I was going to be like leaving her nest. Like, she launched me out of her nest, and I think that being willing to ask the questions and find those people who are gonna help you go after what it is you want to go after, and just also being willing to just try.
To fail. You got to be willing to fail. You have, and all of this speaks to setting that ego aside, keeping that ego in check, because that ego is there for very good reason to help keep you safe. But the safety we needed when we were running away from tigers is not the same safety that we need now. But our brains don't know that. And that's how our ego operates. So, ooh, that is a big learning. That is a big undertaking to set that ego aside and be able to know that you're going to fail, to be able to know that you need help from others and to ask for that help. Back to vulnerability.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's all there is to it, right?
That's all there is to it. So easy.
That's all there is to it. But I think it is simple. I think that people sometimes, and I do this all the time when I'm starting a new project or I want to go after something that I don't really know how to do. I make all sorts of reasons for like, I can't do it until I do this first, and then I'll be able to do it. But like,
Right.
if you do that, you're never going to do
You're
it.
never
And
going to do it.
so just go. And I think that, man, our world needs every single person who is a part of it to like bring the gifts that they've got into it. We need that so badly right now. And so like, I think of this too, and because I'm a woman, like I feel like I think of it that way. It's like whenever I have that fear and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know what to do here. I think of my grandma who, has told me that she wanted to be a journalist and she wasn't allowed to. And I think of like all my like little girl friends and how I want to make it easier for them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when I'm really scared, or really worried about doing something, I literally channel Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
old boss, I'm like, she's a badass. I'm a badass. I've got this, and it's meeting women like you in those moments in time where like I may have seemed like I was this like, really confident person who knew everything I was doing, but like I didn't know what I was doing. And I felt the same way about you. I was like, oh, look at this badass. Like, she's so cool. And I think that, like, it's women like you that, like, help all of us move forward, right? And I think, we elected the first woman of color vice
Oh,
president ever, right? And
yes. Hats off to that.
like so amazing. And it's about time. It's about damn time. But
Yeah.
she has this awesome quote where she talks about like there's going to be lots of times where you are the first person that walks into a room that looks like you and talks like you, and you're not alone in that room.
Mm-mm.
Like
Mm-mm.
we're all in that room with you, applauding you, cheering you on, and we're so proud of you. Use that voice, be
Mm.
strong, like we've got you, and oh, like
There's
I just
there's
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. There's always somebody that is in need of what you have to give. And they might stay silent. You might never know, but there's always somebody that needs to receive what you're putting out there. So, if nothing else, let that be the reason why you forge forward, why you put your ego in the background, and why you do the thing, because somebody needs what you have to offer.
Totally, totally. And humans were so weird sometimes, it's really hard for us to do things for ourselves, like, but I have found, and I've hacked my brain a little bit by really thinking about my grandma. It's like she wanted this opportunity. Like, you've got it. Like, you've got it. Do this for her.
Ooh, that's
She's
such
still
powerful ancestral healing.
right. Yeah.
Right.
And she's still alive, and just the other day, like, I call her on Sundays, and she having her recognize that, like she always talks about the things that I'm doing and
Mm.
that she's proud of me. And it's not the accolades that I'm going for. It's like yeah, like this is the path I'm on. I'm doing this for grandma. Like she made this path easier for me. I'm going to make this path easier for the like women behind me. Like we're going to do this together, you know? And I think that that's really, really important.
That's the most important.
Yeah, we're
Mm.
part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Whenever our ego gets in the way, like we're really not that big of a deal.
It's so funny that juxtaposition of we are really not that big a deal, right? And also the little things that we do every day do matter. They matter in the larger picture of the universe and the generations behind and before. And so, again, if nothing else, that gives you permission to just do the thing. I wondered if I could share a couple grandmother stories of my own
Please
with
do.
you.
I love grandmother.
Because I often think of my great grandmothers as well as inspiration
Mm,
for different reasons. So, whenever I feel like maybe I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy or something is really hard and I don't know if I can do it, I think about my two great grandmothers. Both
mm,
had really tough lives for most of their lives. One lived in a feudal system before she came to America. And each of the young girls in the town had to farm a stepped piece of land. And
mm,
so the higher steps were the better pieces of land, more light, all of that, received the rain first, etc. And yielded the best crops, which then put them in favor with
mm.
the ruler of the town. And my great grandmother, as legend goes, was like, well, I'm not okay being in these lower steps and not receiving like the accolades of the ruler of the town. And she would beat up the older girls and take their pieces of land. And I'm not advocating for beating people up or taking anything from anyone. And also, that is a scrappiness that serves in a more appropriate way for me
Totally,
now. Like, that
totally.
is a badass.
That is a badass. That is a badass. I
Yeah.
think that yeah, being a little scrappy is key, right? And I also think that man, we as women are told that there is limited amount of room. I think
Oh,
anyone who's not a white man is told that there is a limited amount of space for you, which is not true. There is room for all of us. And we are in charge of making that room. And no
yes.
one has to lose like I, there's so much power in giving up some of that control, right?
Because there's actually an endless amount of power and an endless amount of space for people. And I think one of our roles as privileged white women is
Yeah.
to give the space that we have to people of color, to BIPOC,
Oh,
because we have to be champions for people who can't necessarily be champions for themselves in the way that we can be champions, and to offer that space. And that's not a saviorism thing, that's a sharing thing.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah. Uh, Brittany Packnett wrote a really wonderful article years ago, and it talked about spending your privilege. And I try to remember that. It's like in those moments, like we're called at different moments of every day, right? And if you can remember that, it's like, and spending your privilege doesn't make you poorer or
No,
weaker. It actually makes us all stronger,
it
right?
amplifies everything.
And I
Yeah.
think we're told the opposite. We're told that giving up control means you're giving up power. And I think that that's bullshit and it's not real.
Anyone that's told that should get really curious and ask about 5 levels down of why.
Yes, exactly. Find a 2 or 3 year olds and tell them that. And
Yes.
then we'll solve that problem for you.
Right. So, you do you want to talk? I can edit this out if not, but do you want to talk about your upcoming project?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Tease us with it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think when you first asked me to come and talk to you today, which thank you again, it's been really fun, this is great. You said the word evolution, and I think we're all going through our own evolutions, right? And evolution is the only way forward. We've been talking about control, like you can't control a whole lot.
Mhm.
And change really is like, it's just what's going to happen. And so being willing to let go of stuff that's not working and hurting you or hurting other people, and finding the ways to live a more full, just, equitable life in this world. I've been thinking about that a lot after you asked me that question. And thinking back 10 years, like, whoa, 10 years ago, feels like yesterday, but it also feels like more than 10 years ago. I can honestly say I'm a different human than I was then. And a lot of that is being forced to grow through stuff that's happened, through meeting people like you that make me want to grow. And I feel like 5-10 years ago, I still felt like I had a lot to prove. And I'm, like I said, I'm realizing that, leaning into each other and celebrating that connection and our communities is where the real power lies. And so much of my career so far has been amplifying and promoting other people's voices and other people's projects.
Mhm.
And that's awesome. And I'm always going to do that. Right.
Mhm.
But I always felt like I had to make a choice of like that or doing something that amplified my own voice. And I'm also realizing that that's not real. Like, you can do both of these things.
Yes.
Now understanding I can still like promote and amplify the voices and the projects of everyone that I work with and that I run around with, and I can have my own voice. And I don't have to be behind the scenes all the time. So my next big evolution is reclaiming my own voice.
Yes.
I'm really excited about it. It's been a whisper for a long time, and she's getting real loud. She's banging on the doors. So I'm excited to set her free. And yeah, I've talked to you a little bit about this. I'm working on a project right now. It's in the shape of a book. Who knows what it'll end up looking like, because we're talking about evolution. It could turn into something else. But it's really about the case for celebration and how that's going to be what moves our world forward. And I think that when I was first starting out, one of the people I used to work with, and I would run around and say like, we're going to save the world one party at a time. And people were like, those girls. But it's real. Like,
It's real.
it's real, like celebrating every win, big or small. It brings us forward, and it's a galvanizing force. It brings momentum into the stuff that we're doing. And it can be everything from like celebrating, like drinking this awesome cup of coffee and talking to you today, like
Mm.
this is a celebration, to the really big, massive ones, like, us all dancing in the street last Saturday. Like,
Yep.
and I think that, all of those pieces move us forward. And yeah, and I'm really excited to keep digging into that. So I've been researching celebration like all over the world and the history of celebration, like why do we do it? Like why do we celebrate certain things? And then also looking into like movements, some of the biggest movements of our time, and how many little wins had to happen to get us to that one big one, right?
Yes.
And that it's never over. And again, that can be really overwhelming. Um, and it can also be really empowering that we get to actively be a part of making all this change.
I love this so much. I cannot wait
Like,
to see this finished product.
mhm.
What is one way today? We'll close on this, and it's so appropriate since the first time we met, we danced on a makeshift pole together, celebrated that meeting without even realizing that's what we were doing.
Exactly.
Um, what is one way that you are celebrating today on this random Saturday?
I mean, I'm going to like cook up a storm.
Ooh, I
I'm
love
so
it.
excited. So I have this, you can't, well, people who are listening to this can't see it, but I can show you. I have this like massive box of produce.
Oh, that is gorgeous.
That my sister just brought. It's from my mother's garden.
Aw.
And so I'm gonna go crazy and cook up a bunch of stuff in the kitchen. And taking a tip from you in our first meeting, I'm gonna blast some music and like dance around while I do it.
Yes. Props to you. I love it.
Yes, it's pouring down rain. It's the perfect day to do that.
I'm going to go get my hair done a different color, and I'm going to go like I'm normally blonde. We're both blonde. I'm going to go like a deeper red, and I'm going to channel my like inner winter goddess for the next few months, because as we talked, it doesn't really matter if I change my hair color, and also it's a celebration of self to do something like that. So that is what my day holds.
Oh, I love it. Please send me a photo. I would love to check it out.
I will, and I look forward to seeing your Insta photos of your food today.
Yes, exactly. I know I've got a bounty here. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you so much for being here.
Aw.
As always, I love speaking with you, and I can't wait to see what's next for you. Tell people where they can find you and Under Solen.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. Man, this has just been so wonderful to reconnect and to chat with you today. You can find my work at undersolenmedia.com. It's Swedish for Under the Sun. It's spelled UNDERSOLEN media.com. People always need the spelling. And then you can also check out me, Emily Nuchols, at EMILYNUCHOLS.com.
Amazing. Have the best day cooking.
Oh, thank you so much.